lacked the great wealth that was necessary to achieve great power. Before Sulla's victory, such hopes as they had were based on their connections with the populares. Julius's aunt Julia was Marius's wife after all, and Julius himself married Cornelia, the daughter of Marius's successor Cinna. But when Cinna was murdered and Sulla became dictator, these connections proved an embarrassment. And on top of this, Julius's father had died after taking a morning stroll, and from the age of 15 in his family life, Julius was a man alone, with women all around him. His widowed mother, Aurelia, his 2 sisters, his aunt Julia, Marius's widow, his fatherless wife, and from 83 BC, his baby daughter, Julia. Women were always, and not surprisingly, to play a large part in his life. But 15 is an early age at which to assume responsibility for a family, and one with bad connections. Advisers counseled the young Caesar to apply for the post of priest of Jupiter, thus immunizing him from his political associations. But Sulla refused to sanction this appointment, and Caesar was perforce pulled into the political arena. Far from granting him the priesthood, Sulla wanted to offer him his political sponsorship. The price was for Caesar to divorce Cornelia and to marry into a family of confirmed Optimate sympathies. But Caesar had married Cornelia by the ancient conqueror system, under which divorce was a severe impropriety. Besides, he loved his wife, and was perhaps looking beyond Sulla. He refused the offer, and found himself deprived not only of the priesthood, but also of Cornelia's dowry. He was then summoned before Sulla. A Roman historian wrote,
Caesar was a good-looking youth, tall, fair, thin, with rather a full face and sharp black eyes. But Sulla disapproved of his unorthodox clothing. He wore a loose belt and affected fringed sleeves reaching down to his wrists, and he paid too much attention to his personal appearance. His hair was meticulously arranged, and he was seen adjusting his parting with one finger.
Sulla was not pleased, although he may have been impressed at Caesar's courage in rejecting his proposals. As he later remarked,
"Beware the ill-clad boy. There are many Mariuses in him."
Having annoyed the dictator, it seemed advisable for Caesar to leave Rome for a while. He secured a post in the army in Asia, taking part in the successful attack on Mytilene, and being decorated for his bravery in action. Soon, however, news reached him that Sulla had died, and the political climate was already thawing. He returned to Rome without delay, and in order to establish his footing in politics, decided to display his powers of oratory in the courts, in accordance with Roman tradition. He brought a charge of extortion against a prominent supporter of Sulla, one Cornelius Dolabella. He spoke well, a vital qualification for an aspiring politician. The biographer Suetonius remarked,
Caesar delivered his speeches in a high-pitched voice, with impassioned action and gestures which were not without grace.
But although his speeches were published, Caesar failed to gain the conviction, and in the manner of the Roman courts, where violent slander passed as legitimate comment, gross insinuations were made about his personal conduct when in Asia. In Rome, 2 men were moving into the center of affairs, Crassus and Pompey. Crassus was enormously wealthy and had won fame by crushing the revolt of the slaves under Spartacus in 71 BC. Pompey had distinguished himself in Sulla's army, but when elected consul with Crassus in 70 BC, he was at pains to disassociate himself from the dictator's conservative, aristocratic traditions. Now, to Caesar, seemed an ideal time to reaffirm his popular sympathies and to capitalize on his Marian marriage connections. In his first speech to the assembly, he spoke in favor of an amnesty being granted to Sulla's enemies living in exile, including his own brother-in-law. The next year, 69 BC, his aunt Julia died, and in giving her funeral oration, he proudly displayed statues and pictures of Marius and extolled her illustrious genealogy, and, of course, his own.
On her mother's side, my Aunt Julia was descended from kings. On her father's side, she was associated with the immortal gods. The Marcii Reges, her mother's family, go back to Ancus Marcius. The Julii, of which we are a branch, to Venus. Our stock, therefore, has the sanctity of kings. And what man is more powerful than a king, and claims the reverence due to the gods who have kings in their...